Today I'm going to be presenting documentation to representation when video trace evidence is presented as ethnography. My name is Agafonoff and I'm the Director of Real Ethnography and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. As an introduction, I'm a specialist practitioner in ethnography predominantly, but not exclusively, within the commercial insight strategy arena, with particular expertise in rapid participant observation methods for market and consumer research. I'm also a skilled videographer, editor and documentary filmmaker, and I've produced hundreds of video ethnography and video insight programs for a wide variety of insight strategy applications and clients. In a nutshell, I research and produce real-world insights, intimate ethnographic portraits of real people and their subjectivities underpinned with strategic learnings for how to communicate with them, how to innovate for them, how to service them, and how to position brands towards them for the future. I also produce illumination films, animations, and documentaries that bring established research findings to life as tools to educate, influence, disrupt, or inspire key audiences. Today's presentation is informed by my personal experience of practically applying the art and science of ethnography and videography in a commercial research context over the course of more than a decade. I will specifically try to illuminate on the role of video trace evidence in the ethnographic process. I've also developed this presentation with the presumption that many in the audience are new to ethnography or might be confused about the role of video in ethnographic research. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, I want to establish that ethnography is not documentation only. Examples of things that I've heard people refer to as video ethnography in the past includes vox pops, formal video interviews conducted in people's homes but not informed by the cultural or social context, usage and behaviour videos using complete observer methods only without any reflective inquiry with insiders, consumer video diaries that really should be considered cultural text and not ethnographic insights, and real-time streaming of visual data from mobile phones to an online viewing facility. In this presentation, I question whether these really constitute ethnography or whether they might actually be better described as etic documentation or even uncontextualized trace evidence. To document something is to create a trace as evidence, in effect a description through writing, by sketching it, photography, filming, or live streaming from a mobile phone. In ethnography, we record a trace of what insiders say and do within the context of inquiry. This trace should not be confused as the ethnography, nor should it be considered necessarily reality. It is simply a recording by the person documenting the phenomena. The robustness of the trace as evidence is contingent upon the skill of the researcher and their mastery over the means of documentation. This is an example from a video ethnography where I explored the challenges that parents face shopping with kids, and you can view the actual video on the website via the link. As you can see, each frame presents a different perspective. That's because I employed wide shots, mid shots and close-ups as I recorded the trace. When combined into a sequence, they tell a simple but powerful story. As ethnographers, I believe our purpose is not simply to describe people and their worlds. We need to offer rich description with insights. When we record an ethnographic journal, for instance, we're making observations and analysis in our description. We might also employ literary license and an extensive vocabulary to evoke feelings and perspectives in relation to lived experiences. Film and video is a language that we can harness in a similar manner. If we can film and edit trace materials with a keen observer's eye, both descriptively and evocatively, if we employ the breadth of the language of filmmaking to our advantage, It will ultimately enrich the quality of our description and the ethnography as a whole. In commercial research, in commercial video ethnography, therefore, the ideal is to combine the skills, knowledge, and language of a filmmaker with the experience and expertise of an ethnographer or cultural social inquirer who also possesses a strong grasp of the client's business and marketing challenges and has the ability to link ethnographic insight back to managerial implications. If we are weak in any of these areas, it is going to impact the robustness of our original trace evidence. Quite simply, we risk producing a trace that is fundamentally lacking in data richness. For example, if there are two ethnographers with equal experience and their trace tool is sketching pictures of their observations, but one is a professional illustrator and the other has no skill in illustrating, then it goes without saying that the ethnographer with the greater skill in illustrating will record richer, more evocative data. Most consumer video diaries are produced by people who are not ethnographers and not filmmakers. In terms of ethnographic insight, these documents are data poor because the individual is usually weak across the three areas of trace tools, methods, and analysis. In effect, consumer video diaries, I believe, should be considered as cultural texts or ethnographic artifacts. To understand what they really mean really requires a reflexive interview with the people who produce them. And I've supplied a link on the website to an example of that technique as well. When ethnography is broken into its parts, we see that trace evidence is only a fraction of the equation. A lot of inexperienced researchers pick up a flip video camera, go out, make a trace documentation of an informal interview or observation in a context of inquiry, then present it as the findings. But it is the methods and the analysis that ultimately inform how to document and then how to represent the original trace materials in a meaningful, insightful way. A lot of what people tend to refer to as video ethnography is simply data-poor video trace evidence of behaviour produced using a complete observer method. In other words, in the context of inquiry, insiders are not engaged by the researcher to provide insight into the lived experience of their own behaviour. Consequently, the researcher is forced to draw upon their own assumptions in their interpretation of that behaviour. In the end, the conclusions that the researcher makes tell you more about the researcher and their experience as an outsider than it does about the lived experience of the people who actually belong to the context of inquiry. A few years back, I designed and implemented an observer as participant study exploring what it means to be a man, specific to a target market for an FMCG client. And there's a video from that also linked to the website. Other agencies at the time were proposing extremely expensive complete observation studies, which effectively involved living with men and documenting their every move, fly-on-the-wall style, but not engaging with them. However, by collaborating with insiders instead of observing them like guinea pigs, we were able to penetrate the masculinity values and belief systems of a variety of groups of men without an exhaustive observational or full participant study. A simple technique like getting insiders to tell the story behind cultural practices and objects, in this case a hubcap planted on the wall, can lead to profound ethnographic insight. In this respect, choosing the right method was as important as capturing the right sort of video footage and coverage of men's behaviour. Following method, analysis informs how we represent video trace evidence to make it more accurate, meaningful and insightful to subjective vantage points for the research audience. First and foremost, analysis enables the ethnographer to identify and contextualize the key ethnographic insights from the trace evidence. Without analysis, video trace evidence remains raw ethnographic data, After analysis, the video is contextualized and becomes ethnographic insight. It is therefore useful to think of video editing as part of the analytical process in which we make lots of critical decisions. Sometimes less is more, and long tracks of video actually inhibit insight. Sometimes we need to tell a full story and provide deeper context and background to who people are, how they live, and what they live for. In this case, we may choose to create a standalone documentary film out of the trace evidence and add in elements like voiceover narration to help contextualize the data. Invariably, analysis impacts how ethnographers represent video trace evidence. We should never presume that the original trace is enough in itself to constitute ethnographic insight. I'll leave you with these final thoughts, and they are: know the difference between a trace and ethnography. So I hope I've made that clear. If you're a researcher, really ask yourself, have I engaged the whole ethnographic process? And remember to match trace tools, methods, analysis and representation to what it is you need to know and communicate about a context and its insiders. And I believe that the best ethnographies ultimately reveal what it means to be an insider and an outsider, creating that juxtaposition in the way you present your findings is, I always find, extremely illuminating. So thanks for your time, and I look forward to the Q&A.